Hi YouTube and welcome to my channel. My name is Patrick. Today we're going to talk about the future of Linux, and this is something I'm really passionate about because I think that Linux is going to be the next big thing in the technology world, at least on the desktop. So with that being said, let's dig right in. Alright, so the first thing I want to talk about regarding Linux is the user experience. Let's get this out of the way. The user experience on most distributions is pretty bad. I mean, just look at Samtime's videos of trying to use Ubuntu. It is both hilarious and really eye-opening. So if you haven't seen those videos, I highly recommend you look him up. I'll leave a link in the comments down below. But yeah, so Mint is one distribution that I feel does a really good job with the user experience. It's very straightforward to use, it's very transparent, and it even gets a lot of the security things right, like not allowing Flatpaks from untrusted sources. But let's talk about the elephant in the room when it comes to the user experience on Linux. The terminal. Now, the terminal is the poster child, the epitome of user-unfriendly design. It is hilariously bad, because like you open this application and you're greeted with a completely blank slate, a blinking line, and the ability to type words into the terminal, and that's all you get. That's pretty bad. It should go without saying that you need some ability to figure out what you can do in the terminal, but I think there is a solution, and this is going to be slightly controversial. I think the solution is AI. Now, I know I hear you booing and hissing, but hear me out, hear me out. So, I think that the terminal would be a lot more user-friendly if I could talk to it like a person, if I could type things into the terminal and have it figure out what I want to do using natural language. I mean, people obviously love this design. Just look at DeepSeek, look at ChatGPT. People are in love with the ability to type out messages and have some response provided to them. Imagine if they could do that, but in ways that manipulate their system. So I hear you saying in the back, hold on a second, there's a big problem here because people could type in stuff that they don't understand is going to bork their system. I think there's a solution to that too, and something that will gain a lot more popularity in the near future. Immutable desktops. Ubuntu's working on an immutable desktop. The Fedora project has had multiple immutable desktops for a long time. OpenSUSE has an immutable desktop. Here's why I say this is a solution to the AI terminal. Because with an immutable desktop, with the root file system being read-only, you can't bork your system. You can't tell the terminal AI to do something that's going to ruin your system. And so, in this situation, we have an issue where we have the most unfriendly user design possible, and we can turn it into the most friendly design using local large language models, and we can do it safely with the use of immutables. Not to mention all the other benefits of immutables, like the fact that you can't do stuff to bork your system for one, the sandboxing of applications for another. It's just a good way to handhold the user through their system. And so I think that immutable desktops are going to see a rise in popularity this year and in the future. Alright, let's talk about some technical stuff. Wayland, the display protocol. I think that in the near future, every Linux desktop environment is going to be using Wayland. There's honestly no reason why they shouldn't at this point. Yes, there are still some issues, some edge cases where Wayland doesn't work. Like, have you tried to share your screen in a Teams meeting on Wayland? Yeah, it's embarrassing. So yes, there are still some roadblocks ahead of us, but I do think that Wayland is going to figure these things out and become the default display protocol for the Linux desktop in the very near future. Alright, so let's talk about gaming. This one I'm not so optimistic about. I think that fewer and fewer games are going to support Linux. And my reasoning is that more and more games are cutting out Linux by using kernel-level anti-cheats. And that's a bad thing, because these anti-cheats are invasive, they pose a security risk, and it cuts people off, it cuts paying customers off from playing a game that they want to play. It's bad for everybody. And I hear the game developers in the back going, "Oh, but what about the cheaters? What about the cheaters?" And it's like, you're gonna have cheaters no matter what you do. You may as well let more people play the game. I don't know, maybe I'm out of touch with that. That's just how I feel about it. But I think that it's not all doom and gloom. Eventually, the Proton project is going to figure out how to work with kernel level anti-cheat. And so I think it's going to get a lot worse very soon, but I think in the long term, we're going to end up with a very good gaming situation. It's just that we're going through a rough patch right now. Alright, let's talk about Linux in business. So I think that Linux, it's fair to say Linux is going to continue being the default choice for a business server. I mean, it just makes sense. It's easy to set up, you set it and forget it, and you run updates on it every once in a while. It's a great platform, does what it needs to do, it's free. I mean, I can't say enough good things about server-side Linux. It's really well figured out. Containers are probably going to see a continued push in the enterprise and see even more widespread domination because containers just make sense. They're just a natural fit for an enterprise looking to deploy microservices. But I don't think that businesses are going to start deploying Linux desktops without some serious changes. Linux desktops need to be easier to manage centrally, and I know we have stuff like Ansible and Terraform, and a skilled system administrator can set these things up and do a very good job of managing Linux desktops in the business. But the problem is, it needs to be simple enough that the help desk can do it, because the help desk often helps with administrative tasks, and Ansible is not easy enough for a help desk staff member to use on average. There's some of you out there who are on the help desk who are very skilled with Ansible, and to that I say you won't be on the help desk for long, but it just needs to be easy enough that somebody without that level of skill can use it. Also, Linux desktops need to be easier to use for the end user, and I hear you saying they're already easy to use. Yeah, to you and me, they're simple. But to the average Joe Jane six-pack, they're going to look at a Linux system and go, I need training. And that's the problem. That's the issue. Because in a business, you can hand somebody a Windows laptop, and they'll just know how to use it. They'll just instinctively know, like, oh yeah, I'm familiar with this, I don't need training. And training costs money. And so that's why I'm saying that Linux desktops need to get even easier to use, because we need to get them so easy to use that they're at the point where we can just hand it to somebody and have them use it without any training. And that means baking things into the GUI. That means not hiding things in the terminal, or at least updating the terminal with large language models so that the user can speak to them using natural language. I do think that GNOME is going to continue being the default choice for a business application, because GNOME is the closest thing to being simple enough that you can hand it to somebody without training them. And finally, let's talk about desktop Linux. I don't think that desktop Linux is going to gain significant market share in the user space in the near future. In the long term, I think it has a lot of opportunities to do that, but right now in the current state, it's not going to happen. See, Windows is just entrenched too deep. The problem is, people already know how to use Windows, and it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? Because people use Windows at work, so they know how to use Windows, so when they go home, they want to use something they already know. And then when they go back to work, they want to use something they already know. And because of this cycle of familiarity, that's really what entrenches Windows so deep into the ecosystem. Also, people are just more likely to use Macs. I mean, I won't lie, I use a Mac every day. The thing about it is that people are much more likely to shell out the money for a Mac, which honestly are really good values these days, rather than install Linux off a thumb drive. And I want to return to my biggest point here, the terminal. The terminal is the biggest problem with Linux desktop adoption. I'm not saying that it needs to go away, And I'm not saying that we need to exclude people who know how to use it. I'm just saying the terminal should default to a mode where it's leveraging a large language model so that you can speak to it using natural language and it'll figure out and do what you want it to do. Now, I understand that can get dangerous, so it will need some guardrails, and you're going to have to hold the user's hand through all of it. And you'll also have to have a mode that you can switch into and make the default that's the traditional terminal experience. Because for a lot of people, they use Linux because of that terminal, and we don't want to take that away from them. But we need to make it more accessible to the masses if we want to see more people using Linux, more software running on Linux, and more Linux adoption overall in the business and at home. Anyway, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this little video. My name was Patrick. If you liked the video, like the description, and leave a comment in the subscribe button down below, and I'll catch you in the next one.